so let's go a little bit into, the basic story without breaking out too much into spoilers. So,
Okay, so we're starting back with Danny traveling down the hallway in the good old Stanley Hotel, cruising along in his trike, and oh no, room 237. Oh shit. And then you get to kind of see a hint in the shadows of what's going on in that room. Barely. You really gotta pay close attention to notice it. But then it ends up flashing to what happened immediately after. He's back at home. He's having weird shit still going on. He still hasn't talked to his mom because, him and Tony. But it ends up skipping back and forth from there into the future for a minute. And then you get to see full grown-up Danny Torrance. And you get to see a conversation between him and Dick O'Halloran that definitely needed to be had before, his dad went psycho and all that shit happened.
Oh, yeah.
But at least they had the discussion after his dad died.
Indeed. Oh my gosh, it was like that. That was as much as I love that scene, it threw me off at first just because I wasn't expecting all the back and forth between, past and then future.
But I think it definitely helped with explaining key things that I would have wanted to know.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would definitely agree. And they did a good job of literally tying it in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you went like, if you can put up with, a little bit of, exposition and a little bit of tie-ins, then, you will go into this movie and it's just seamlessly flows in through it. Like, you could probably watch The Shining and then go and watch this movie and be just like, wow, this is like seamless. This could literally just be one long movie.
It does flow very well. And plus, it just shows the actual progression of how Danny's life would have gone, just given the trauma he's been through and everything going down. Because then you get to see him as an adult man suffering with a crippling alcohol addiction. He wakes up next to someone he doesn't even know, has to take care of her kid, and then just ditches out but takes her money. And it's rough times for Danny.
She dies. Like, they never find her body. Her baby and her.
Fucked up. We don't talk about that.
Yeah, that was fucked up. Like, he was not a good person. Like, that incident, messed him up.
Next to a corpse with an arm across him, and he's like, oh, I didn't go to bed with anyone. Oh, it's you.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we didn't live. No one came to check on me because I always abandoned my kid at the house, so no one came to hear his crying. And then she, lifts her head up, and her dead baby's, right there, and you're like, he gave that kid Cheez-Its. He didn't survive. It's so cruel.
Yeah, that was probably the most shocking thing of the film. And I don't know if you noticed my reaction. I immediately just was like, I tightened up like that. I was not expecting it.
My jaw just dropped a little because I was like, they went there.
I saw your eyes just go wide.
Yeah. So I had the idea, the initial episode, I was like, that's weird. She's not waking up when he's, rustling around all her shit and brings in her kid.
Yeah, and not moving at all.
So I had an inkling of what was gonna go down, but
considering they were doing cocaine, yeah.
I didn't expect it to be that intense.
Yeah, or that graphic to show that.
For a Stephen King movie, especially with the modern ones they're starting to do, it definitely had a great graphic twist. They didn't spare on the gore stuff. But they didn't also overdo it and make it just straight.
It was very practical. It's something you could see, especially with that scene, It's just, there wasn't over putrefaction or anything like that, Eyes were glazed over. Yeah, it's just that is probably what she would look like after being dead for, I think, what was it, a week at that point? Or 3 days?
That's been a long while, I think.
Was
couple
it?
Months.
Okay.
Because he started talking back and forth on the chalkboard. And then it was he's been to 8 months worth of AA meetings.
Okay, well, yeah, but that was before the AA meetings, though.
His Shining, seeing it. Then he's like, ah.
Oh yeah, and he's like desperately trying to hide his shining. Like he just associates it with bad things.
Drinking it away because he doesn't quite know how to control all the beasties still trying to get to him from the hotel. He locks them in boxes, but they still keep coming.
Indeed. But at least he's realized how to mentally lock them away. And that comes into play later with the little girl.
And I will say, if you didn't like wrinkly old grandma tits in the first one, well, guess what? You're in for a whole bunch of wrinkly old grandma
That's right. She's probably the most played, like, hotel ghost.
She gave me the worst nightmares as a kid.
Oh my gosh.
So I understand why they would play it up so much. But I'm starting to think Stephen King just has a fear of naked old women. There was one in it.
Yes, there was.
So, what you trying to tell us? I'm afraid too. I live with my grandparents. Like, come on.
Oh my god.
Things you shouldn't see at the movies.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And then we go into where we're introduced to the cult under Rose the Hat. She's the first one you meet, and she immediately puts on a charismatic display. Like, innocent, but yet you can tell there's something under the interior. She's kind, but you can tell it's almost like a mask.
Dark intent.
Yeah.
Luring little girls in with singing and flowers and magic tricks. And then, oh, don't worry, my friends are just coming from out of the woods.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, and yeah, so essentially what happens is they attack these children who have the shining, and they by cutting them, because pain and fear apparently does that.
They really get it going, so they get extra juice out of it. Like when you squeeze a Capri Sun all the way flat and stick the straw where it doesn't go.
Which is played up a lot in the books. Like, that is also a reference to it as well, in reference to fear and sucking. Exactly. So again, tied up. The movies don't play it up as much as the books do, but you can definitely tell the tie-ins, especially with some of the locales, because, I mean, in every movie or location, they somehow always end up in New England.
Yeah,
whereas a lot of stuff happens.
He's an East Coast boy. He's staying true to his roots.
Exactly.
But, I mean, in this one, we go quite a couple states.
Yeah.
So, big travel trip.
Indeed. Oh my gosh. But yeah, so essentially what they do is they cut these children open, and they just keep cutting them, and as the fear and they just drain their souls away until there's nothing left. Apparently, long ago, like, people were, as they call it, much more steamy, which I assume to mean they lasted.
It is much more steamy the whole time. I tried not to laugh when that came on. It's like, people just aren't as steamy anymore.
I heard you kind of giggle at that point, and I was just like, yeah, you kind of went there. It's hard not to when they're talking about this, and yet people are steamy. But yeah, so... But apparently, you could torture someone for much longer back in the old days. Apparently, adults weren't as, like, corrupted either.
And they were more potent, so you could just, one and done it like a Red Bull and call it good, and you'd be all energized. But now they're like, this is weak shit.
That's
just
right.
a cup of coffee.
But what it essentially does is it slows their aging process. And it enables them to, get hurt, and they can heal.
Mm-hmm.
They can drink as much as they want and never get, like, hammered.
Yep. It's not immortality, but if you're well fed, you're pretty good.
Indeed, it would be a very tempting offer
Yeah,
for certain people, but there's a cost. Yeah. Yeah, for a certain person, which we'll get into. We're going... So, yeah, Snakebite Addie. So she is this girl who apparently has she's 15. She has a deep hatred of men.
Pedophiles.
Yeah, pedophile. Yeah.
Which I can't blame her.
What she lures them.
People.
Yeah, and she lures them, and she has the ability to telepathically, like, just control people. It's just like...
She hypnotizes them and kind of you know, she does the whole catfish kind of bait, how to catch a predator thing, like, meet me at the movies. Then they're like, oh, well, you look a lot better than your pictures. Like, you look older than your picture.
Yeah.
And makes them fall asleep.
And then cuts them
on the face and
Hence,
gives them some terrible, terrible reminders for the future whenever they look at their wives and whenever they go to seek out other little girls. So, she's got some issues, but overall not a bad kid.
Indeed. And so after she's done with one in a movie theater, obviously Rose, like she and her
Crow Daddy.
Yeah, Crow Daddy, who I'm guessing they're like a couple because they talk to each other and such like that. Yeah, lovers at least. So he pretty much stalks them out, and she then decides whether she's going to hunt or turn them, and whether or not she's going to bring the whole crew or not.
And apparently they haven't had a hypnotist in the group in a while, so they choose to recruit Snakebite Andy and just bring her in, which looks like a relatively painful process.
Yeah, essentially what it is they have to lay them down, and then with whatever's left of the soul of the last person they consumed, they make them inhale it, and essentially what it does is it kills them, and then they are sort of brought back to life, but they're forever living off those souls. So pretty much if they don't get well fed, then they cross over
and they wither away
into nothingness,
which is a very dramatic process, I will say.
Oh yeah.
But you get to meet the whole clan. It's a big old group of people traveling in a caravan that have apparently been doing it for centuries.
Since Roman times, like millennium. So yeah.
So.
Yeah, and he looks great for being over 2,000 years old.
He looks a lot like Lurch.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I was that old, I'd probably look like Lurch too at that point.
Indeed.
So, can't blame you, Gramps.
So yeah, they've been for centuries just living like gypsies, but also living like kings. I mean, I imagine they have lots of money at this point because they would know exactly where to hoard it, how to hide it,
rob people.
Exactly. I mean, they have, obviously the hypnotist now. Rose is very good at astral projection and projecting herself into people's minds and resisting other people's powers.
Mm-hmm. And then with that, we hop back to Danny, who, with his alcoholism, decides to move towns. He goes to a whole new place. And then you get to see kind of a quick glimpse, because keep in mind it skips literally 8+ years from the gap when he moves. He meets Dilly, and he's really cool. Like, they become best buds. He gets him to join AA, and he's getting his chips and everything's good. But then he gets a job working overnights at a retirement home, which is also near and dear to me.
A hospice as well, yeah.
Yeah. And he notices this cat going up to doors. It's like, scritch, scritch. And it goes in. Then he walks in, and he's informed that this cat only comes and lays on people's beds when they're about to die. And Danny, being unique as he is, decides to comfort people once they get to that point, and he earns the nickname Dr. Sleep from all the people in his house.
Yeah, because he pretty much says, you just go to sleep.
And then, sings them some songs, talks about their past with them, and they drift away.
Indeed. It's never really explained, why the cat does this, or what it is, whether or not it has its own form of shining, or whether it's another reference to
Cats
other
just
things.
Always have that.
Exactly.
It's the Stephen King universe. They're just too smart.
Indeed. That is true. I had to think about
King,
it.
I thought you were a corgi man. Got some questions.
That's right. Something's very suspicious around here.
But yeah, and then after that point, you get introduced to a cute little girl named Abra having her birthday party. There's some crappy magician who's like, oh, look at all of my spoons. Sticks one on his nose and is like, oh, what am I going to do? And she's like, I can do that too.
And he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Nice, honey. Cool.
Yeah.
And her parents take the cake inside, and there's suddenly a bunch of spoons
hanging from the
ceiling out of nowhere. a bunch of silverware on the ground, and they drop. Then, of course, she comes trotting along and is like, ha, magic. And they're like, the fuck is wrong with my kid? But they eventually adapt, and you skip a couple years into the future, and, you know.
No, granted, they did try to, yeah, they tried to hide the more abnormal parts of it, like seeing things like she was seeing. And she
didn't talk to her parents very much.
Yeah, sadly. But, I mean, they were aware that she did have powers, so.
Mm-hmm. And then, out of the blue, at Danny's apartment, he has a chalkboard wall, and he comes home to a hello with a smiley face. He starts responding, and lo and behold, it's this little girl. And they become good old pen pals, talking every day and every night. No question of who the other is for a long, long while.
Yeah, never any questions. Just always hello, answer back and forth.
But then some messed up stuff happens. Kind of a, if you like kids a lot, I'd say a trigger warning.
Yeah, definitely a trigger warning, because this is where you show what happens when they consume a soul.
The caravan ends up finding a boy playing baseball who has the shining and uses it so he can hit every pitch perfect and then just run it out. So they notice this, and they try convincing him to get in the van when he's walking his way home, and he's in Iowa. But he says no, but they have Andy, so she convinces him to get in the car.
Just like her friend.
And uses her hypnosis. So they take him away, and then next thing you know, they're at this industrial plant. They all arrive. They get stakes in the ground. They tie him there, and then she proceeds to start cutting him right open and torturing him.
Yeah, like there's blood.
And he's
screaming.
Like, that was some of the most realistic crying and screaming I have seen from a kid in a movie. So props to you, kid.
Yeah, for real.
You killed it. It was good. Well, sorry, no offense, but you did great.
Yeah, you did great at dying. The best dying actor ever.
You went out doing what you loved. Bye.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But, yeah, no, that's a pretty brutal scene that you get to witness, and that disturbs Abra, because she views in on it somehow, using her shining.
Yeah, she's apparently, like, she's, at this point, at her age, she's starting to learn how to control her powers a little bit more, even though she's not talking with her parents about it. Like, she's obviously been talking to Danny a whole lot, you know. She knows how to use it, and she's starting to refine it, and as it's getting better, she's starting to hone in on these, like, attacks. And you find out that she's actually been keeping track of all these missing children that these people have been attacking for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Wakes up screaming in the middle of the night, talking about a kid being murdered, and then she's like, instantly at Danny's house, there's this giant rumble, and you see the wall crack, and it says Red Rum.
Yes.
And then
I was actually really excited.
They say
that.
baseball kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when some real shit starts happening.
Yeah, that's the end of Act 1, essentially. You know, everything's established, you meet all the people, and then you move on to Act 2, and things ramp up, because at this point, Rose now is aware that someone's watching. She's not fully aware who it is or where she is, but she is now aware that there's a watcher, as she refers it.
Mm-hmm. And then, at one point, she tries viewing in on her watcher. And lo and behold, Abra has set a trap, since she had some warning from Danny.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Wait, yeah, you're making
I gotta go back.
Because there was the supermarket scene before that.
There's the meeting before that.
Oh, yeah, the meeting as well.
So Abra, being a crafty little shit, decides to get on a bus and go to some town she's never been to before in her life, where Danny lives. She finds him working the little trailway thing, and then she's like, hey, hello, with her brain. And he's like, you know it's weird for a man my age to be seen with a teenage girl alone in public. She's like, oh, you're my Uncle Danny, it's fine.
That's right, totally Uncle Danny.
He's like, you should, hide your gift and go away and not pursue these people because they sound crazy. And she's like, but you need to go to Iowa and get his baseball mitt for me, or else we won't know what happened. And I need to track them, or they're going to kill me. He's like, fuck this. No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's had enough with The Shining.
But then when he's at work later that night at his hospice job, he decides to look around. He's playing with the cat, and she walks to a door
that's empty.
And he's like, "What?" And he walks on in, and lo and behold, who's there?
Yes.
Dick Halloran.
And I was so excited.
In 8 years.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh. I was, and again, I was so fooled. Like, I thought it was him. I thought they de-aged him, but that it was fully him.
Said it was him, but great actor.
Yes, he did an amazing job.
Fantastic.
Voice and everything. Like, even the look. Like, I was amazed.
Everything.
Like, the cheekbones, the eye. I was just like, ah.
Yeah, that was incredible. But Dick was ignoring him for years and years because the last time they interacted was when Danny decided to steal a bunch of money out of the dead lady's purse in front of her child and zip off because he assumed she spent all his money on cocaine. But he determined it was important enough to come back finally after 8 years. He's like, "Yo, you need to help that little girl or else you're an asshole."
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's a pretty swell idea, I guess. And then everything starts kickstarting. Abra has another incident because Rose is able to catch her being watched.
So yeah, she's watching him at the supermarket, and all of a sudden Rose is aware of it. Sees her in the door of the frozen food section, just like, hello. But then
tries grabbing her from behind the head, and suddenly Abra just explodes her backwards. Glass flies everywhere. She's like, "Get out of my head!" And like Rose is like, "What the hell? That was some strong shit. I need it."
That's right.
And she tells everyone, "Was like, hey, we're going over there." Like,
we haven't had someone like this in decades. Like, we could feed off her for years.
And then Abra lets Danny know, "Oh crap! Like, I got caught. Like, this girl knows where I am now. It's all bad."
Well, she still doesn't fully know where she is. Just that she exists and like what she looks like and everything. It's not until she tries to astral project and go into her mind where she actually realizes where she is.
Rose fucks up.
Oh, God.
She decides she wants to hop into Abra's brain, to figure out her location, a little more about her.
Brains are a lot like libraries in this movie, which actually would kind of make sense if you think about it from a fantasy-like perspective.
Lots of memories, information stored.
Exactly.
SpongeBob had it right.
Mine would be probably full of, like, filing cabinets rather than shelves.
Mine is just papers continuously flying everywhere with no sense of organization. They're just constantly floating.
That's right. It's like when you're trying to think but nothing happens.
Yeah. They just spontaneously combust at that point. But when Rose is poking around in her filing cabinet inside of Abra's head, she assumes Abra's asleep in bed as she's watching. But suddenly, the cabinet slams shut on her hand, trapping from pretty much here down in this cabinet. And you see the creepiest Abra get up out of this bed, no eyes, like nose and mouth, but nothing here, like a wig on to distort her appearance. And then she's like, "I set a trap for you." And Rose is like, "What the fuck? This has never happened." And
Abra actually goes into her mind.
She degloves her fingers trying to get out of this cabinet, which is brutal because they do show it. Show
you see the skin
and the
coming
muscle
off.
pulling. And it's good.
Blood everywhere, yeah. But yeah, it was really well portrayed because I mean it's almost like an interrogation too if you think about it because there's a spotlight on Rose the whole time.
Yep, it just clicks right on as soon as they're like, "Oh, you got your hand caught in a cookie jar." Like,
yeah,
look what we're gonna do.
And she was in Rose's mind for a minute before Rose was able to get her out of there.
Yeah, you get to see creepy Abra just like, because Rose makes this reference that, "Oh, well, you think this is a lot of memories? My mind is a cathedral." And next thing you know, you see Abra in the middle of this cathedral, like, fastest fingers in the world, just absorbing information. All about Rose. And then Rose is able to finally get pushed out of there, rips her hand free, and kind of tumbles her way back into her actual body. And then she gets thrown off the top of her van because she likes to meditate on top of her moving van.
Indeed. I'm guessing that's probably how she tries to find people with The Shining.
Gotta be close to the sky.
Yeah.
But from there, locations given away, everything starts really hitting the fan.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, Act 2, or I guess it's still in the middle of Act 2, but that's where the oldest of them dies because they haven't had a good meal in decades. They're forced to live off kids who, don't have as rich or as much steam as they used to, and so they're essentially like living off bare bones minimum. And so the oldest of them finally starts to just
wither
away. And when you see it, it's crazy because, you see their face and then it just goes to like almost mummification.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally they just evaporate into like a bunch of dust and the steam of the victims that they've eaten.
Yeah, which gets eaten up pretty quick.
Because you hear the screams like when they go too. And it's not just their screams either.
No, there's a lot of twitching involved as well.
Oh yeah, it's almost like seizure time.
Then it just kind of dawns on Andy, and she's like, "I thought we couldn't die," and it's like, "No, you need good food supply, or you will die."
Eat well, live long, is what I told you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to be fair, she never lied to her.
Yep, she never did. She didn't do any false promises.
Yeah, she just didn't fully explain that.
Because Rose is a good bad guy.
Exactly. It's the ones that, you can see their motivation. They're not, like, over-the-top bad, but you can tell they're bad. Those are the best villains.
She's doing what she needs to. Bitch gotta eat.
Exactly.
But after that point, everyone's getting real hungry after they, devour the grandpa that just passed away right in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So they decide, we really need to get this show on the road. And finally, Abra's able to convince Danny, like, hey, you should really help me out here. We need that glove from Iowa. So she's able to get the vision from having had contact, just so they know where to go in Iowa, where he was buried, everything. And then Danny has the fun challenge of trying to tell Billy, like, hey, I know you've known me for a couple of years now, and you're going to think I'm fucking crazy, but I have this thing where I can talk to a little girl that's like thousands of miles away, and it's fine, but there's a dead body in Iowa, you want to help? And yeah, he believes him, and they go on a sick road trip to dig up a little boy's body for a baseball mitt.
Indeed, and oh my gosh, and they describe it so well, like, you can't, I mean, obviously in the movie theater you can't smell anything, you see the visual, but I mean, you really get a grasp of how terrible this smells.
Because Billy goes into a story about his hunting trip that stopped him from hunting, where he lost a deer, then he found it days later, not because he saw any trails or anything, but he could smell it.
It just went poof, yeah.
All he could do was smell. And he's like, this right here smells like that dead deer.
Oh. Yeah, and it's just, and they didn't shy away from anything. They showed the kid's face, they showed his hand.
The bugs crawling out of his face.
Yeah, it was good. It was amazing. I kind of cringed a little bit.
But again, we're very sensitive about children. Trigger warning.
Yeah, if you have anything about, like, harm coming to kids, you should not see this movie because you will get probably very angry.
Yeah, if you had a problem with it, this isn't much better.
No.
So, I mean, whatever.
So yeah, they get his glove, which is going to enable her to find them and be able to track them because one of the guys was wearing the mitt for a long time as they were kidnapping this boy to eat him.
Mm-hmm. But then there comes the issue. They're already on their way to get Abra. Danny has to get her the mitt. But, she's like barely a teenage girl. She lives with her family. And Danny tells her, you need to tell your dad everything. Like, you need to let him know exactly what's going on and what's going to happen, because he's the smart adult here realizing how weird this is going to look to a normal person.
And he almost beat the crap out of Danny, not realizing what was going on until finally she just force feeds all the memories of what's going on into his head.
And he can't process that very well, so he goes to drinking and then establishes, okay, so this is a real thing, and if my daughter's in danger, I guess you can take her to the middle of the woods. Go ahead. And they devise a plan, a very sneaky plan involving more astral projection.
Indeed. And then going back to the cult again. So, oh God, what is his name? Rose's lover?
Daddy.
Yeah, he convinces her that she shouldn't go because they already established that she can that Abra can track her. You know, she has a pretty hard scent on her. So they're going to go themselves, and they're going to take her in.
And then they'll bring her back, and then everyone can eat.
Exactly.
Like takeout.
But he goes off on himself because apparently he and you find this out later, but I mean, looking back on it, makes sense. He goes off on himself instead of with the group because I think he sensed that something was not quite right. He apparently has the ability to actually sense the difference between a projection and an actual person because he knew exactly where to go as opposed to the group.
The group mainly went out because Danny and Billy drove out into the middle of the woods in nowhere, and they go and hide in the woods with guns and tell Abra to project herself onto a picnic table meditating. So, when the group in the caravan arrives, Andy walks up to her and is trying to hypnotize her with the whole, we're friends, and then proceeds to inject her in the neck.
Just like, I thought this was going to be hard with how you talked it up.
But next thing you know, Abra turns into a teddy bear and they're all like, what the fuck? And gunshots start happening. And apparently these things die pretty easy because they get shot like once in the chest region and they're just down on the ground twitching and crumbling and evaporating.
Yeah. Well, some of them went down a little harder, like...
But that's the thing, if it's direct to the chest...
Yeah, if it's like in a fatal area, then yeah, you're going to die. But I mean, like...
The shoulder...
took one in the shoulder, she took one in the neck, and she was still like up and at it. It was finally one in the... Where was the last one?
It was her neck.
It was her neck, yeah.
There was a massive shootout, though, and pretty much the whole gang dies. Andy hides in the thing for the caravan, but they end up going to her. And in a very sad turn of events...
Before she dies...
She's managed to convince Billy to kill himself. So if you're sensitive to suicide by shotgun, in specific, you see the full visual of it. And it's pretty graphic, but poor Billy.
Yeah, but that also, like, for as sad and terrible as that scene was, that solidified, like, Snake by Andy is my favorite side character in that whole movie.
She was brutal.
She, like, for the screen time she got, she did steal the show a lot.
She had all the good lines, because all the other crew didn't really get anything besides Grandpa.
Yeah.
And Baseball Mitt Boy. But... So, they realize it's a diversion, but then it cuts back, and you see Crow Daddy entering into Abra's house where she's sitting on her kitchen counter projecting, and he gets her in the neck.
Apparently after killing her dad.
Yeah. And then he kidnaps her off, throws her in the van. Danny can't get in contact with anyone. He's alone in the woods shouting for her. But she can't hear him because she's unconscious. And with The Shining, just in case you didn't know, very specific, if you have alcohol in your system, sedatives, things like that, your shining won't connect. Like, it won't work because that part of you isn't open.
Yeah.
So, Abra's pretty doomed. She wakes up in the back of Crow Daddy's van, and he goes on to lecture her about, like, oh, well, a lot of good people died today on my side, and some people on your side died as well. And in the end, it's all the same results. And you're still here.
And you're still going to get eaten.
He's just, like, giving her the worst time, trying to crush her confidence as much as he can. And I'm just like, oh, just look out the window and enjoy it. You're going to die soon anyway. It's like, oh, that's messed up. But then Danny gets back to his apartment and has a huge old struggle because he sees Abra's dead dad.
Yeah. But he fights it off, and this leads into one of my favorite scenes. It was probably one of the best performed scenes, as well as one of the most comical scenes for, like, how serious it was, of him going in there, you know, calming her down, and then essentially he takes control of her body.
After trying to radio connect to her. And then, you just see Danny talking through Abra's body.
Using swear words.
And talking about being hungover, and I haven't been hungover.
Yeah, it's so...
Crow Daddy just kind of turns around and he's like, who are you? Like, I've never seen this trick before. What you doing here? And they have some back and forth banter, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
But then it comes down to asking questions. You think maybe he's going to shoot.
Yeah. You're so overconfident you didn't even think to wear your seatbelt.
And then he manages to use his shining to throw the car off to smash into a tree. Crow Daddy flies right out the windshield. And, just the whole death thing. And then Rose has been watching it the whole time. And she's like, no!
Yeah, like, I don't know if it's physical pain or psychological pain, but, I mean, she's, like, screaming as each one of them dies, so...
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
She's like, what the fuck? Those are my friends.
Indeed. Oh, my gosh, but Abra, like, as Crow Daddy's dying, like,
I hope it hurts.
I hope it hurts a lot. Like, it's a really dark side of her that,
Might be a bit of a sadist. Might be.
A little bit. You never know what to grow up to be.
She decides to trot her merry way back to some kind of civilization. She's in the middle of nowhere. But she sees Rose in the middle of the road projected. Rose is just like, you're a little bitch. I hate you. You just killed everyone. And then she's like, I know. And then just walks right through her. And Rose decides from then on, it's really on. I'm going to come get you myself.
Indeed.
And then Abra meets back up with Danny.
And that's where Act 2 ends and Act 3 begins. By far my favorite. So they go back to the hotel. And that's where they're going to attempt to finish off Rose. And
there's a part where Abra, her mom's worried. Her mom got back from her flight and she calls her. She's like, oh my god, I just got home and your dad was murdered the hell out of what's going on. Where are you? Are you okay? She's like, hi mom, I love you. And hangs up and tosses it out the window. And then...
For the best though, I mean.
Yeah, no tracking at that point. You didn't put a tracking chip in your kid just to fuck him.
Yeah.
And then, just taking a leisurely old trip from the East Coast all the way to Colorado with your uncle.
Yeah. there was a certain suspension of disbelief you had to go for that, but...
But, I mean, hey, it works.
Exactly. Like, it doesn't look hokey, and they don't milk out the journey to get there. There's a few long shots, but...
I will say, though, the probability of a most likely two-wheel drive small sedan
getting through the
mountains in the snow is very low. Because I mean, they couldn't even use a normal car to get out of the hotel. They had to use snow plows to get down.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's none of my business.
Indeed,
they make it to the hotel just fine and dandy, and Danny has to go ring some awakening bells and get the place's juices going.
Yeah, and of course set the trap because he knows once he's gonna do what he's gonna do, he's gonna have to make sure that it never does this to anyone again.
Because it's a dangerous hotel. I give it a -2 stars on Yelp.
Exactly. -2 stars with a vomit.
But in real life, it's a pretty cool looking hotel.
Yeah. And that's where, just the amazing shots, all the recreations,
you get
some of the reshoots.
That was when I had the most suspense, honestly.
Yeah. I could tell you were really...
You see him walking up that snowy path to the front doors, but I will say, for being an abandoned and caved-off building, from my experience as a young teenage rebellious type, it wouldn't be that easy to just, suddenly pry the door open and, bam, in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
But once he walks in, the hotel greets him by flickering the lights on for the first time in years.
Indeed.
And shit ensues.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh. So he knows it's a dangerous place, and he knows eventually he's going to have to release all of the freaking boxes. So he doesn't want her in there until it is
necessary.
It's absolutely necessary. Like when she's there and she has to go through the hotel.
But he takes a stroll down memory lane, of course. You know, that one summer vacation that turned into a winter vacation where your dad tried killing you and your mom and died.
And it kind of explains more as to what happened to his dad. I mean, essentially what happened is the hotel literally went into his dad, so it wasn't even his dad at this point. Yeah.
Kind of like the Wendigo thing in Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
So, Danny goes back to the old room, and you get to see, like, the lovely shots of, like, what the room looks like now, all kind of decrepit. You see the door where the axe had come through, and then you see the bathroom, and that was one jump scare.
Yes.
Like, I don't really fall for them, but, like, he looks through the door where the hole is, where he's like, here's Johnny. He's casually looking through and you're like, oh, it's just going to be a normal shot of the bathroom. But then it immediately cuts to the axe coming through the door and Shelley Duvall in the corner.
Yeah.
You're like...
I was actually really surprised, because you do not jump scare.
No, I was like, damn it.
You know it's a good scene when it gets you.
It's just dead quiet. I was like, oh, it's normal. He's just having memories. Oh, apparently somehow you remember that very well. Okay. But then things take a darker turn because he goes down to the ballroom. The ballroom where his dad had a lovely conversation with the bartender named Lloyd.
Indeed.
And there's still a glass on the table waiting for him when he gets there. And this was probably more of the lackluster revision to acting, because at first all you see is Lloyd's hands fixing the drink, pushing it forward, and then Danny kind of having a monologue in the exact same position Nicholson was in.
Yeah.
Which you're just like...
It's just like, oh my gosh, please tell me they got him NDA or something. Yeah.
And you see the red sleeves and everything of the bartender, so it all looks the same.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely it backs out. And then you see who the bartender is. The voice really was the off-putting part here because it wasn't spot on. I get it because it is a mask, but it would have added, I guess,
so much just
more
to have an
poignant effect.
Yeah, to have the actual voice, and at first, you could kind of take away like the look of the actor because it was a profile shot essentially. It was a very side shot, and I mean they did a decent job. I mean you could tell, obviously, but it was just like, but when it's went to looking at his full face, it was just like, why would you do that?
That was the lackluster.
It's like, oh.
But they have a really good banter where it's similar to the original Shining, where it's just like, I think you have me mistaken for someone else. And he's like, no, you're Delbert Grady. And it's like, no, I'm not. Like, what you're talking about? And the hotel plays this game with Danny, trying to convince him to drink alcohol and trying to get him to move on. But then he has a moment, like a heart-to-heart with his dad, per se, where he's just like, I'm telling you about my problems. You're not even going to ask me about, like, what happened to me and Mom. She was your wife. He's just like, you have me mistaken for someone else, sure.
In the end, though, he does break down to the sod, and he finally just...
And then he's just like, okay, fuck this, and tosses the glass. He's just like, I'm going to have a drink instead.
Yeah, it's just like, with the wife, the kid, and just everything is wearing on him just day after day.
Yeah. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
But after this point...
It was a good closure moment, though, I think. I just wish that...
It was almost closure.
Yeah. Almost.
Just that ounce. And then, after that, you see him go to the boiler room, where he's fidgeting around with a couple of things. He's turning knobs. Everything's turned on completely. Everything seems normal. He goes back to the front because Abra contacts him through The Shining and is like, yo, I see her. She's coming down the mountain. We need to make a move.
And that's when they have to go inside, and she obviously comes in, and that's where they had one of my favorite scenes of the original.
Best shot for shot right there.
Yes, the blood coming out of the elevator. Oh my god. And just the way she walks by it.
Just like, casually, whatever. And she's just tromping through the hotel like she owns the damn place.
Yeah, no idea what she's in store for.
You come to the typewriter room. That
Oh.
big open shot where you see the typewriter on the table and the stairway.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to be an amazing confrontation scene.
You see Abra standing behind, and then Danny standing up front with the axe.
Mm-hmm.
They have their little banter back and forth. An important detail is Rose touches the typewriter. Mm-hmm. So by that, she kind of gets some of Jack Torrance's essence into her. And they're just talking back and forth. Abra is just kind of like, okay, we need to take control of her somehow.
Yeah, he tells her to run. And
you don't know who you're dealing with. And they zoom into her mind, and it shows Danny's maze, the hedge maze.
Indeed.
And Rose walks through it. She's not finding Abra.
But
Abra
she's seeing, like, she's catching,
yeah,
she's catching, like, glimpses of her, but yeah.
Just like when you saw Danny.
And so you think, oh, Abra's gotten inside her mind again, is what you're thinking.
And then everything seems to be going in Abra's favor. Rose is confused as hell, thinking she's inside of Abra's mind, when it's actually Danny's.
Yeah.
And Abra keeps running by and slicing her knees over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then she finally gets her by the throat. And, you know, while Rose is busy doing her bad guy spiel and telling Abra what a bitch she
is creating a mental box, which he trapped the other monsters in to try to trap her.
But, to your dismay, as soon as the box is about to close up on her, she throws Abra and she steps forward and crumbles the box.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything snaps back into reality. Abra's thrown backwards. And they're like, okay, let's do this. And then Rose is like, ooh, wait, who are you? To Danny, because she's like, oh, you have the shining. You would have been tasty. Where have you been?
Yeah, and a power that she'd never seen before that was stronger than a lot of other people's.
But she also talked shit on him by being like, oh, you're old and polluted. You taste like whiskey. Bleh.
she's still eating him.
And then there's the moment.
What is it that she gets with the axe?
Well,
oh, yeah.
There's the upcome, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you see kind of Danny, though, replicating his mother with the axe, backing up the stairs.
Yes, the relentless.
And then you see Rose even mimicking Jack Nicholson's movements coming up the stairs.
But very deliberate. Like,
and the same, like, head movements. Mm-hmm. And it's almost eerie with how she does it because it's so spot on. Like, I can't wait until it's out on DVD so people can line up shot for shot.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is gorgeous.
Yes, and I'm glad that she did her own dialogue instead of just monicking the line, because that would have seemed cheap and tacky.
Yeah.
But I mean, to have done the actions in the same manner, with the same mannerisms.
And it wasn't over the top. It was very subtle, where you could, like, you knew exactly what was going on. You're like, it's another one of those kind of little, like, cookies that you get in the movie where you're like,
I'm so glad that they had this.
But it also really makes sense because that hotel does tend to control people. So it's definitely influencing everyone in there while they're just walking through even.
Yeah, and like you find out later the hotel itself is like this, and I think is it the hotel or is it like an entity within the hotel that's like doing it?
I think it's the hotel.
Yeah, it's like this entity. You know, it's sort of like, you know, other things he's done, you know, the Wendigo in Pet Cemetery, you know, Pennywise, there we go. You know, like these mysterious entities that just end up on Earth and apparently what it consumes on people and their shining.
Mm-hmm.
And takes control of people, which led to the whole slaughter, which you heard about in the first Shining.
Yeah. But in a turn of events, though, Danny goes to swing at Rose, but he only gets her in the shoulder area. But she's well fed because, you know, since all her friends died, she ate every stuff she had. And she grabs the axe out of herself and swings it back, bops Danny in the face. Not with the axe in, but, you know, just knocks him to the ground. Yeah. And then starts playing games with him, gets him in the leg once.
And then nicks his femoral artery, so he's like bleeding to death.
And he's at the bottom of the stairs because he recreates the tumble that Jack Nicholson does down the stairs when Wendy hits him. So he's at the bottom of the stairs. She comes down. She's like, "Ooh, you're tasty," and starts playing inside of his wound with her fingers.
Yeah.
And it gets pretty gnar, but you see that.
There's blood everywhere, and she's just sucking up his soul.
But she's distracted by that. Danny manages to use his brain power. At first, he tries putting her in a box again, but he's unable to get it open far enough, so it collapses.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, oh, what if I just, finally open and unleash all my boxes? I have like over 20 stacked up here.
Yeah, each of them with a terrible, terrible individual.
So suddenly, all hell breaks loose, the gates open up, and lo and behold, there's a big old reunion on the stairs of all your favorites from the first, except I didn't see Dogman.
No, I didn't see him. I think he was gone.
But they all swarm up and they're like, ooh, Rose is full of souls. That's tasty. And they suck her life to death.
Yeah, they literally drain her. And then they jump on Danny. Like, you think they're going to eat him too, but apparently...
They have other plans.
Yeah, just possessing him was the intent. Just like they possessed his dad.
And then you get the recreation of him running after Abra down the hallways. Not the carpet ones, but the blue hallways.
Mm-hmm.
With the axe, stumbling kind of like he does in the maze.
Yeah. And
Abra manages to zoom on up the stairs and get kind of hidden, but she goes into 237.
Yes.
After having an encounter with the twins and Mr. Grady. And yeah, that's not a good time. And, more old naked ladies.
Yes, so creepy.
Ah.
But yes, he comes out, and Danny's briefly able to reassert control, though.
Because she uses her shining to reconnect back to him when he's about to axe her in the room with the old lady.
Before he does, like, she pretty much tells the hotel, because it's
a mask. It's a facade.
It's just like, you don't know where you're standing. And it's just like, what are you talking about? I know this hotel like the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. It's just like, you don't remember where Danny went to when he first went in, do you? Mm-mm. He went to the boiler room. And the hotel's just like, fuck!
And then Abra zooms off and is just like, bye! After she talks to Danny, and he's like, you need to get out of here. Mm-hmm. But then possessed Danny runs back to the boiler room. He's like, oh no, I want to touch this knob to unscrew it so it doesn't blow up.
And then Danny
takes control again. And then, bad Danny, good Danny, bad Danny, good Danny, bad Danny, good Danny. And then, oh no, everything's on fire. What the fuck?
And then just spreads everywhere.
Spreads everywhere, but there's a really touching moment right before where suddenly you see Danny's mom.
And he's a little boy again.
He's a little boy, and she just takes his hand, and they're just standing there. Then the flames engulf everything. Abra's outside, and you just kind of get to watch the Stanley Hotel burn. Mm-hmm. And you hear kind of a moaning and screeching to kind of represent the entity dying off. Mm-hmm. A fitting end. A fitting end.
Indeed. And so after all that,
the police come very quickly.
Yeah.
Very alarmingly quickly.
Yeah.
Like the lights all on fire, Abra's standing there, and then it's like, wee, woo, wee.
Like, and if you remember the original one, this is a hotel literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, how did they get there so fast?
That there was an issue there at all whatsoever.
I mean,
until they got down the mountain.
Yeah.
The first one. Because maybe they saw smoke, but at the same time in the mountains, it's hard to see smoke coming up.
Yeah, especially in the dead of winter because the cloud cover's already so low.
So, I mean, suspends the disbelief a little because it is very immediate, but it serves the point. Abra gets home, and she's talking to Danny.
It's just like, did he make it? And it's just like,
I'm happy you're okay.
Yeah.
It's like, at first I was like, no.
Yeah, no way.
But then I remembered Danny when he was talking to Dick O'Halloran as a child after Dick had already died in the hotel.
Yeah.
And then it was a full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Like he talked to Danny until literally he didn't need him anymore, and then that's kind of Danny's thing now. So essentially the story of that little thread is that, we don't end after death.
we kind of just, do what we want. If you don't like someone, just don't talk to them.
Yep.
Then you can bug them in their dreams and in real life.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's pretty cool. That could be useful.
Indeed.
And then there's a moment between Abra and her mother because her mom walks in and catches Abra talking to nothing, in theory. And then she's like, who are you talking to? And at first she's just quick to be like, nothing. Her mom goes to walk down the stairs and she's like, okay, that was why I was talking to Danny. She's like, okay, that's good. He's like,
but then she kind of makes her smile with the fact that we move on, even Daddy.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the thing that even if she hasn't accepted it, she kind of she's okay with it.
Mm-hmm. And she's just like, Dad's happy too. She's like, well, I mean, at least my husband's happy over there. And trots down the stairs.
Yep.
And then dead silence. And the movie is over. It starts playing the same music that's at the end of The Shining.
20s flapper music. And when it ends,
dead silence.
Well, ambient noise. Yeah.
If you're from a mountainy state, you know the sound of wind going through the mountains and the trees.
I was really sad there was not something afterwards, though. I was really sad about that.
Yeah, at least the credits weren't super duper 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 long, though.
Yeah, it was a surprisingly small crew for something I'd expect from this.
And it was awesome.
Oh yeah.
So that's a full spoiler review right there.
That's right. Best sequel we've ever seen. You've heard it here. 9 to 10 for me, 10 to 10 for you, and I think that wraps it up pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Thank you for joining me again this week, but it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
For this week it's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in.
Yep, and we'll catch you next time.